White Roses of Arizona, Part 1. The Day the Desert Refused to Stay Silent. The bus hissed like it was relieved to be rid of her. Claire Whitmore stepped down into the Arizona heat and immediately felt it. Not just the temperature, but the exposure. The sky was too wide, the light too honest. There was nowhere for secrets to hide here. The bus doors shut behind her, and then it was gone. She stood alone at Dry Creek Station, one suitcase at her feet, a life reduced to leather handles and folded silk. 3 days ago, she had been engaged to a man who controlled half the skyline of Chicago. 2 days ago, she had learned he controlled other things too. Her schedule, her friendships, her finances. Yesterday, she had found the courage to disappear. She had not expected the silence to be this loud. A gust of wind tore at her blouse, whipping her hair across her face. She grabbed the suitcase handle tighter, as if someone might try to take even that. "You're not dressed for this place." The voice was low, steady, not curious, assessing. She turned. The man standing near the shade line looked carved from the land itself. Dust clung to his boots, sun-carved lines around his eyes, and something guarded lived behind them. He wasn't looking at her the way men usually did. He was evaluating risk. "Is there a hotel nearby?" she asked, forcing her voice into calm. He didn't answer immediately. "Depends what you call nearby. I call it walking distance." "Then no." The wind dragged silence between them. He glanced at her suitcase, at her heels, at the faint tremor she was hiding. "You got someone meeting you?" Her instinct was to lie. "Yes." But something in his gaze made that feel pointless. No. The truth tasted like surrender. He tipped his hat back slightly, studying her face more closely now. "You running?" The word hit too close. She straightened. "Excuse me? You don't look like you came for vacation." "I didn't." There it was. The crack again. Not weakness. Fracture. He looked toward the empty road, then back at her. "I've got work," he said finally. "I didn't ask." "I didn't offer yet." She fell quiet. He walked toward her suitcase, picked it up as if it weighed nothing. "You ever cleaned a house?" Her pride flared. "I didn't get off this bus to be insulted." "Answer the question." "Yes." "Ever cooked for more than 2 people?" "Yes." "Ever lasted in a place that didn't care who your father was?" That one stung. She held his gaze. "Try me." Something flickered in his eyes, not amusement, recognition. Ethan Callahan didn't hire strangers. He especially didn't hire women who looked like they belonged in glass towers and wine tastings. But he had seen the way her fingers trembled when the bus pulled away. He knew that kind of tremor. He'd worn it once himself. 5 years ago, his ranch had nearly been taken by the bank. Drought, bad investments, a partner who vanished when the debt came due. Trust was a luxury he had buried. So why was he offering this woman a job? Maybe because the desert didn't forgive softness, and she was standing there refusing to break. Or maybe because he saw something familiar in her eyes. A person who had just discovered that love could be a cage. The drive to the ranch was long and quiet. She stared out the window, watching the land stretch into endlessness. Most people turn back before the halfway mark, he said. I'm not most people. He didn't smile. That remains to be seen. The Callahan ranch house wasn't picturesque. It was functional, weathered, solid, no charm, no romance. It had survived storms. Inside, the air carried cedar and coffee and something heavier. History. You'll be paid weekly, he said. You work hard, you stay. You don't, you're gone. Do you fire often? She asked. I don't hire often. She set her suitcase down near the stairs. And what exactly am I to you here? He met her eyes directly. Help. Not servant. Not charity. Help. The word unsettled her more than anything else. The first morning broke her, not physically, psychologically. The alarm at 4:30 felt like punishment. The kitchen felt hostile. The stove hissed unpredictably. The bacon burned. He ate it anyway. You don't have to pretend, she snapped. I'm not. It's terrible. It's edible. That annoyed her more. I had a life, she muttered, more to herself than to him. Past tense, he replied calmly. Her head snapped up. What does that mean? It means you're here now. His tone wasn't cruel, it was grounding, and she hated how steady it made her feel. Days turned to weeks. The desert stripped her. Her manicures chipped first, then her sleep, then the carefully curated image she had spent years maintaining. One afternoon, she found herself kneeling in the dirt, repairing a loose hinge on a gate. Sweat ran down her back. Her palms stung. She began to laugh, not hysterically, but freely. Ethan watched from the barn door. You finally losing it? He asked. She looked up at him, hair messy, face sun-flushed. No, she said softly. I think I'm finding it. The words hit him harder than they should have, because he had spent years trying not to find anything at all. Then came the storm, not the kind that warns you politely, the kind that arrives angry. The sky turned bruised purple in minutes. Wind ripped through the fences. A calf panicked near the wash. "Leave it!" Ethan shouted. But she didn't. She ran straight into the wind. He swore and followed. By the time he reached her, she was tangled in wire, hands bleeding as she tried to free the animal. "What are you doing?" he roared over thunder. "Helping. You could die out here. Then help me faster." Lightning split the sky. For one suspended second, he saw her clearly. Not the city girl, not the runaway bride, a woman who refused to abandon something helpless. He cut the wire, pulled her upright. The calf bolted free. Rain soaked them both. She was shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline. "You don't get to throw yourself into danger like that," he growled. "And you don't get to tell me what I'm worth risking," she shot back. The storm raged around them, but something else ignited in that argument. Not anger. Recognition. They were both used to surviving alone. The black sedan arrived at dusk 3 weeks later. Claire saw it first. Her breath left her body. Ethan felt the shift immediately. Who? She didn't answer. The man stepping from the car looked immaculate and furious. "Claire!" he called, as if summoning property. Ethan stepped forward instinctively. "You need to leave. This doesn't concern you. It concerns my land." The man's gaze swept over the ranch with visible disdain. "You think this is where you belong?" he asked her. She felt old instincts rise. Apology, justification, explanation. Instead, she said, "Yes." Her voice didn't shake. The man laughed sharply. "You'll come back. You don't survive without me." Ethan's jaw tightened. He knew that tone. Ownership disguised as devotion. "She survives just fine," Ethan said evenly. The man turned to him. "And who are you?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "The man who doesn't need to own her." Silence, heavy, charged. Claire felt something inside her snap free. For the first time, she wasn't choosing between men. She was choosing herself. The sedan left in a storm of dust, but the tremor remained in her hands. Ethan noticed. "You're not going back," he said. It wasn't a question. "No," she whispered, but fear lingered, because men like that didn't lose quietly. That night she found the white roses near the dry creek, growing impossibly from cracked earth. "How?" she asked when Ethan joined her. "Deep roots," he replied. She touched a petal carefully. "What if my roots were in the wrong soil?" He stepped closer. then maybe you were planted wrong. The air between them shifted, not soft, not safe, dangerous, because now it wasn't about survival, it was about wanting, and wanting was far more terrifying. She turned to him slowly. "If I stay," she said, "it won't be because I need help." His heartbeat betrayed him. Then why? She stepped into his space. "Because I choose this." The desert wind stilled. He had built his life on control, on caution, on never needing anyone, but her eyes weren't asking to be saved. They were offering partnership, and that frightened him more than the storm ever had. Part 2. What the desert takes back. The desert never forgets a storm. Even after the sky clears, the ground remembers. Claire felt it the morning after the black sedan left. The air was too still, too watchful. Ethan was already outside when she came down. He wasn't drinking coffee, he was reading something. A thick envelope lay open on the table. Her stomach dropped before she even saw the logo. Whitmore Holdings. Her name was still legally attached to it. "You didn't tell me," Ethan said quietly. She didn't ask how he knew. She walked closer. Each step felt like confession. "What is it?" He slid the paper toward her, a formal notice. Filed that morning, an intent to investigate property irregularities connected to Callahan Ranch. Her ex-fiancé hadn't come to plead. He had come to apply pressure. "He can't do this," she whispered. "He already did." Ethan's voice was calm, too calm. "How does he even know about the ranch?" She swallowed. "He doesn't need to. He has lawyers who can find anything tied to my name." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And your name is tied to my land? How?" Her throat closed. Silence answered him. Because when she had fled Chicago, she hadn't just taken clothes. She had accessed joint funds, transferred money, closed accounts, used a private emergency reserve to buy herself time. That reserve had once been invested in land development, land in Arizona. She had assumed it was long sold. She had been wrong. "I didn't know," she said, voice breaking. "I swear to you, Ethan, I didn't know." He wasn't looking at her. He was staring at the horizon through the kitchen window. "I don't play games with banks," he said. "This ranch nearly died once because I trusted the wrong partner." She stepped forward. "I'm not your partner." "No," he said quietly. "You're worse." That hurt more than anger would have, because he wasn't shouting, he was withdrawing. By noon, 2 black SUVs appeared at the ranch gate. Lawyers, not cowboys. Men in pressed suits stepping onto dust like it offended them. Claire watched from the porch. Ethan met them halfway down the drive. She couldn't hear every word, but she saw posture, authority, threat. One of the men gestured toward the house, toward her. Ethan's shoulders went rigid. She felt nausea rise. This wasn't about love anymore. This was war conducted politely. Inside, the lead attorney removed his sunglasses slowly. "Miss Whitmore," he said smoothly, "your fiancé is concerned." "I don't have a fiancé." "Legally, that remains debatable." Her pulse spiked. Ethan stepped closer to her side. "He doesn't get to define her," he said evenly. The lawyer's smile didn't shift. "We're not here to define. We're here to evaluate." He placed documents on the table. Audit requests, land ownership review, debt restructuring clauses triggered by external financial interference. Claire's breath grew shallow. Ethan scanned the papers once, then again. "They're looking for leverage," he said. "Of course they are," the lawyer replied. "You're emotionally involved with an asset tied to Miss Whitmore's capital." Claire turned cold. "Asset?" she repeated. The man's eyes didn't soften. "You are not the first woman to miscalculate independence." The sentence cracked something inside Ethan. He stepped forward. "You're done here." "We'll be in contact," the lawyer said lightly. The SUVs left dust swirling behind them. Silence settled. Heavy. Claire couldn't speak. Ethan folded the papers once, twice, carefully. "You need to tell me everything," he said. She told him about the hidden accounts, about the surveillance, about how Daniel had once installed tracking software for security, about the night she realized he had access to her emails, about the way love had slowly turned into confinement. She didn't cry. That scared him more. "You ran," he said quietly when she finished. "Yes." "And you didn't look back." "No." He nodded slowly. "You should have." Her head snapped up. "What?" "You should have checked what you were tied to before bringing it here." There it was. The fracture. Not just anger. Fear. He had almost lost everything once. And now it was happening again. Because of her. "I didn't bring this here on purpose," she said, voice shaking. "Intent doesn't change consequence." The words landed like a door closing. That night, they didn't eat together. She sat upstairs on the edge of her bed, staring at her hands. Her instinct was to pack, to disappear again, to stop contaminating every place she touched. Downstairs, Ethan stood alone in the barn. He remembered another night, another betrayal, a business partner who had siphoned funds quietly until foreclosure loomed. He had sworn never again, never trust, never intertwine. And yet he had let her into his house, his routine, his land, his quiet. He had begun to want, and wanting made him vulnerable. The desert punished vulnerability. The next morning, she was gone, her room empty, suitcase missing, the kitchen clean, on the table a handwritten note. You were right. I should have checked what I was tied to. I won't let him use me to hurt you. I'm sorry. Ethan stood still for a long moment. He told himself this was relief, cleaner, safer. But something in his chest tightened painfully because the ranch felt larger and emptier. Claire hadn't gone far, just far enough. A small roadside motel 30 miles south. She paid cash, sat on the bed, and finally let herself break. She wasn't running from Daniel anymore. She was running from becoming poison. If she stayed, Ethan could lose the ranch. If she left, she lost. She stopped the thought. She didn't get to want. Back at the ranch, a second notice arrived. More aggressive, immediate compliance required. Ethan read it once, then drove 30 miles south. He didn't know if she would be there. He just knew one thing. He was tired of being controlled by men in suits, and tired of letting fear decide for him. When Claire opened the motel door and saw him standing there, dust on his boots, jaw tight, something inside her almost gave out. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "Neither should you." They stood in the doorway, tension thick. "I'm not losing the ranch because of you," he said. Her stomach dropped. "I know. I'm losing it because I'm scared." She froze. The words weren't what she expected. "I'm scared of repeating history," he continued. "Scared of trusting someone whose world can crush mine without even trying." Her eyes filled. "I didn't mean to." "I know." Silence. Then, "But I don't get to push you out because of what someone else did to me." The desert had taught him endurance, but she had forced him to confront fear. He stepped closer. "If we fight this, we fight it together." Her voice trembled. "And if he destroys you?" "He doesn't get that power." The air between them shifted again. This wasn't romance now. It was alliance, choice, under pressure. "I don't want to be saved," she said. "Good," he replied, "because I need you standing." Outside, the sky darkened. Another storm building? But this time, they weren't running separately. Part 3. The Price of Staying. The desert does not bargain. It either holds or it takes. 3 days after the lawyer's visit, Ethan received the formal notice. Auction review scheduled, pending asset verification. If irregularities were confirmed, the ranch would be flagged for temporary freeze under financial investigation. It was legal language, but it meant one thing. He could lose everything. Claire read the document twice, then a third time. Her face went pale, not fragile pale, calculating pale. They're not actually investigating the ranch, she said slowly. Ethan didn't look up. They're creating instability. She exhaled sharply. He's trying to scare you into selling. Ethan folded the paper carefully. He's trying to remind you who controls the board. The words cut. Daniel doesn't control me, she said. He controls systems, Ethan replied, and systems crush men like me. That landed heavier than anything else he had said. Because it wasn't pride, it was truth. The bank called the next morning, polite, concerned, watchful. Ethan stood outside near the fence line while he spoke. Claire watched from the porch. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He just listened. And when he hung up, something in his posture had changed. They're tightening the timeline, he said. How long? 30 days, maybe less. Silence swallowed the space between them. 30 days to prove stability. 30 days to fight a corporation with deeper pockets than the entire county. 30 days before the land that had carried his family name for 3 generations went public. That night, Claire opened her laptop. For the first time since she fled Chicago, the screen felt like stepping back into a cage. But she logged in anyway. She navigated through layers of corporate filings, investment trees, subsidiaries, and then she found it, a trust, still active, still partially in her name. Daniel had never removed her fully. Control was more satisfying when it remained shared. She closed her eyes. The amount inside that trust was more than enough to erase Ethan's debt. Instantly, completely. The next morning, she placed a folder on the kitchen table. I can fix this. Ethan looked at her. The tone in her voice told him everything. No. You don't even know what I'm offering. I don't care. She stepped closer. This isn't charity. It feels like it. It's leverage. It's his money, Ethan said quietly. Her jaw tightened. It's legally mine. It came from him. It came from me signing contracts, me building partnerships, me closing deals. He held her gaze. And you think he won't use that? I don't care if he does. I do. The air sharpened. This ranch doesn't survive because someone else rescues it, he continued. It survives because it stands. And what if it can't stand alone this time? She shot back. His silence was answer enough. That afternoon, they barely spoke. The tension wasn't loud. It was worse, controlled. Claire walked to the edge of the property near the dry creek. The white roses were blooming stronger now, absurdly bright against cracked earth. She knelt beside them. You don't get to be proud and lose everything, she whispered to herself. Footsteps behind her. I heard that, Ethan said. She didn't turn. Why is accepting help weakness to you? It's not help, he replied. It's dependency. You think I'd control you? No, he said immediately, then paused. I think he would. That hurt. Because it was true. Daniel would never let an act like that remain uncollected. That night, the fight finally broke. It wasn't dramatic. It was raw. You'd rather lose the ranch than accept money tied to me? She demanded. I'd rather lose it than owe your past. I am not my past. The words echoed across the kitchen walls. He stepped closer. Then don't bring it into my future. The silence that followed was brutal. Her eyes filled, not with tears, with realization. To him, she was still partially attached to something poisonous, and he didn't know how to separate her from it. I'm trying to protect you, she said softly. And I'm trying to protect what's left of my dignity. There it was, the real fracture. He had almost lost everything once because he trusted someone who promised partnership. Now, the woman he was beginning to love was offering salvation that felt dangerously similar. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for my pride, she whispered, and I won't let you sacrifice yourself for my land, he replied. They stood inches apart, but further than ever. 2 days later, a notice appeared online. Public auction listing Callahan Ranch. Provisional. The county had moved faster than expected. Claire felt the air leave her lungs when she saw it. He hadn't told her. He had chosen silence instead of surrender. She found him in the barn. Why didn't you say anything? Because I thought I could still handle it. And now? He didn't answer, because the truth was simple. He couldn't. That night, she packed, not dramatically, quietly. Her suitcase felt lighter than the first time she arrived. She left the folder with the trust documents on the kitchen table and a note. You don't owe me, and I don't owe him, but I owe myself freedom. I won't let your ranch become another cage. When Ethan walked into the house and saw the empty stairwell, something inside him broke in a way the legal notices hadn't managed. The folder lay open. The numbers stared back at him. Freedom written in digits. He understood something then. She hadn't offered the money to bind him. She had offered it to sever herself. He picked up his keys. 30 miles south, the same motel, the same door. She opened it slowly this time, as if expecting him. You can't fix this alone, she said before he spoke. Neither can you. He stepped inside, closed the door. I was wrong, he said quietly, her breath caught. About what? About you bringing your past into my future. Silence trembled between them. You are not his leverage, he continued. You are not his extension, and you don't need to buy your way into staying. Her eyes filled now, because this wasn't about the ranch anymore. It was about identity. Then what do we do? She whispered. He stepped closer. We fight smart. The storm outside began to gather again. But this time they weren't arguing about pride. They were planning. And somewhere in the desert night, the white roses held their ground. Part 4. The distance between us. The desert is honest. Cities are not. Claire had forgotten how loud Chicago was. The moment she stepped out of the taxi, the glass towers swallowed the sky. Reflections of steel and power replaced open horizon. The air smelled like money and ambition and memory. She stood in front of Whitmore Holdings for a long moment before walking inside. She had once walked through those revolving doors with pride. Now she walked through them with purpose. Daniel Whitmore did not look surprised to see her. He looked entertained. You came back, he said calmly, rising from behind a desk that overlooked half the city. I came to finish this. He studied her carefully. The tan from Arizona hadn't faded yet. Neither had the steadiness in her posture. You look different. I am. He smiled slightly. No, you look temporary. The old version of Claire would have flinched. The new one didn't. You're dissolving the trust, she said. Today. He leaned back in his chair. And why would I do that? Because I'm prepared to expose the tracking software, the surveillance, the coercion. His eyes sharpened. You signed those agreements. I signed them under manipulation. Silence. Dangerous silence. You think anyone will believe that? He asked softly. I don't need everyone. I need one judge. The air in the office shifted. For the first time, she saw calculation instead of control. You've been coached, he observed. No, she replied. I've been alone. Back in Arizona, Ethan stood at the fence line watching the cattle move slowly across dry land. The auction listing had gained traction. Bidders were watching. He had spoken to the bank again. 30 days had become 23. The desert wind carried dust across the yard. The house felt emptier now, quieter. He hadn't realized how much sound she brought with her, the way she hummed while cooking, the way her boots echoed differently on the porch. He had told himself letting her go was protection, but protection felt a lot like absence. Claire's legal meeting lasted 6 hours. Paperwork, statements, negotiations. Daniel didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He negotiated like a man discussing market shares. You walk away with nothing, he said finally. No money, no leverage, no future claim. That's the point, she replied. He studied her again. You're choosing poverty. I'm choosing freedom. And this rancher is worth that? She paused, not because she doubted Ethan, because she realized something larger. It's not about him. It was about herself. And that was what Daniel could never understand. In Arizona, the first official appraisal team arrived. Ethan met them alone. He walked them through land that had carried his father's footsteps, his grandfather's. He spoke calmly, but inside something hollow had formed. What if he had miscalculated? What if pride cost him everything? He returned to the house at sunset. The white roses near the dry creek were in full bloom. He stood beside them longer than usual. You'd hate this, he muttered softly. She had once said the desert didn't compete with anything. Now it felt like it was competing with silence. The call came 3 days later. Claire stepped outside the courthouse building when her phone rang. Ethan's name. Her breath caught. Hey, she answered quietly. I didn't call to change your mind, he said immediately. I know. I called because the auction date moved. Her heart tightened. When? 2 weeks? Silence fell between them, the weight of time pressing down. Are you still in Chicago? He asked. Yes. Another pause. I'm close, she said carefully. To what? To being free. He closed his eyes briefly. I don't want you rushing decisions because of me. I'm not. That part was true, but the timeline now carried urgency. That night, she met Daniel one final time. Not in his office. In a conference room with lawyers present. The dissolution agreement sat between them. You're making a mistake, he said calmly. I already made one, she replied. And what happens when he loses that ranch? The question hit harder than she expected. She pictured Ethan standing alone in the barn, dust in the air, stubborn and proud. If he loses it, she said quietly, it won't be because of me. Daniel leaned back. You think love is strength? She shook her head slowly. I think control is weakness. The documents were signed, the trust dissolved, her name removed, the last financial tie cut. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt clean. In Arizona, Ethan received another update from the bank. Without the external pressure of corporate interference, the audit had slowed, not stopped, but slowed. He stood on the porch at dusk when headlights appeared on the horizon. For a split second, he told himself not to hope. But hope doesn't ask permission. The car stopped near the gate. The door opened. Claire stepped out. No suitcase, no hesitation, just dust under her shoes and wind in her hair. He didn't move at first. Neither did she. The space between them carried weeks of silence. Is it done? He asked. Yes. All of it? Yes. He exhaled slowly. You shouldn't have had to do that. I didn't do it for you. A faint smile ghosted his mouth. I know. She walked closer. The sunset painted everything gold. I didn't come back to save the ranch, she said. Good. I came back because I choose this fight. He stepped toward her now. And if we lose? She met his eyes without fear. Then we lose standing. The wind shifted around them. For the first time since the threats began, he felt something steadier than pride. Partnership. He reached for her hand. Not possessive, not protective, equal. And somewhere beyond the dry creek, the white roses held through another storm. Part 5. The day the land was called. The morning of the auction arrived without ceremony. No thunder, no warning wind. Just heat, the kind that presses against your lungs and reminds you that survival is work. A temporary stage had been set near the county building 30 miles south of the ranch. Folding chairs, folding tables, folding futures. Ethan stood near the back, hat low, jaw locked. Claire stood beside him, not behind, not in front, beside. The Callahan Ranch was listed third. 2 smaller properties went first. Quick bids, clean sales, applause, paperwork, finality. Claire's pulse climbed with every passing minute. She scanned the crowd. Local ranchers, speculators, 2 men she didn't recognize in tailored suits, and then a third SUV pulled into the gravel lot. Black, polished. Daniel stepped out. He hadn't come to negotiate. He had come to win. Ethan felt Claire stiffen before he saw the reason. He didn't look at Daniel immediately. He looked at her. "You don't owe me an apology," he said quietly. "I'm not apologizing," she replied. Her voice didn't shake, but her fingers tightened around his. The auctioneer's voice carried across the crowd. Lot number 3, Callahan Ranch, appraised acreage and structures as listed. The number was announced, lower than it should have been, deliberately conservative. The bidding began. A local rancher raised first. Another followed. Small increments, safe increments. Then a sharp voice cut across the air. "Double!" The crowd murmured. Daniel didn't look at Ethan. He didn't need to. The message was clear. "I can end this now." Claire's breath shortened. "He's not buying it to keep it," she whispered. Ethan knew. Daniel would own it long enough to dismantle it, to make a point, to prove that escape had consequences. Another bid, higher. Daniel matched it without hesitation. Again and again. The price climbed beyond what locals could reasonably afford. Chairs shifted. People withdrew. This was no longer a community purchase. This was a statement. Ethan felt something inside him go still. Not panic, not anger. Resignation. He had prepared himself for losing to economics. He had not prepared himself for losing to vengeance. Claire felt the shift in him. "Don't," she said softly. He didn't respond. The final call approached. "Any further bids?" Silence. Daniel adjusted his cuff calmly. The gavel lifted. "Wait." The word cut through the heat like lightning. Every head turned. Claire stepped forward. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. She wasn't supposed to do this. Not like this. "I have documentation to challenge the appraisal," she said clearly. The auctioneer hesitated. "This is not the appropriate—" "It is, if The valuation was influenced by active litigation pressure that has now been legally dissolved. Murmurs rippled. Daniel's eyes sharpened. "What are you doing?" he asked quietly. She didn't look at him. She handed the clerk a folder. Signed court dissolution. Proof of severed financial ties. Evidence that the prior audit had been triggered by corporate manipulation. The air shifted. The auctioneer consulted quickly with the county official. Time stretched painfully. Ethan stepped closer to her. "You didn't tell me you were bringing this." "I wasn't sure I'd need to." Daniel's voice came low and controlled. "You think this changes anything?" She met his gaze now. "It changes everything." The county official stepped forward. Due to newly submitted documentation regarding external influence on property valuation, the auction is temporarily suspended pending review. Gasps, protests, relief, chaos. The gavel did not fall. Daniel's mask cracked for a fraction of a second. "You're gambling his land on bureaucracy," he said softly. "I'm giving it back its real value," she replied. The crowd slowly dispersed. The tension did not. Ethan turned to her. Once the noise faded. "You could have lost everything," she swallowed. "So could you." He stared at her. "You don't get to sacrifice yourself like that. And you don't get to surrender." The words hit harder than any legal threat. He stepped closer. "Do you have any idea what it did to me, watching him try to buy what I built?" "Yes," she said quietly, "I do." Because she had lived inside that kind of ownership once. Daniel approached one final time. "This isn't over," he said calmly. Claire held steady. "It is for me." He looked at Ethan. "You think she won't regret tying herself to this?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. He looked at Claire, really looked at her, not as liability, not as risk, not as salvation, as choice. "She's not tied," he said evenly. "She's standing." Daniel's jaw tightened. For the first time, he had no move left. He left without another word. The sun dipped low as they returned to the ranch. Nothing had been won. Not yet. The suspension meant review. The review meant waiting. But the ranch was still theirs, for now. Claire stood near the white roses as the sky turned gold. Her hands were shaking now that the adrenaline had faded. Ethan walked up behind her. "You scared me," he admitted. She gave a small breath of a laugh. You scared me first. Silence, wind, distance. He stepped closer. If this falls apart, he said quietly, I don't want you thinking you failed. She turned toward him. If this falls apart, we failed. The word we settled between them, heavy, sacred. The desert wind moved through the roses, bending them but not breaking them. And for the first time since the threats began, the ranch didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like ground worth fighting for. Part 6. What we choose to keep. The decision came on a Thursday morning. No ceremony, no dramatic phone call, just a quiet email from the county office. Appraisal adjusted, corporate interference dismissed, auction permanently withdrawn. The Callahan ranch would remain in Ethan Callahan's name. Claire was in the kitchen when he read it. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, staring at the screen. She watched his shoulders, the way tension slowly left them. It's over? She asked softly. He nodded once. It's ours. Not mine. Ours. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding for weeks. But relief didn't bring euphoria. It brought something heavier. Stillness. That evening, the desert felt different, not triumphant. Quiet. The kind of quiet that follows survival. Ethan stood near the dry creek where the white roses bloomed stubbornly against cracked earth. Claire joined him without speaking. The sun dipped low, washing everything in gold. I thought I'd feel victorious, he admitted. She gave a small smile. I don't. He glanced at her. What do you feel? She considered it. Free. He understood that. For weeks, the ranch had been a battleground. For her, it had been something else. Proof that love didn't have to cost autonomy. He turned toward her fully. I need to say something. Her heart tightened slightly. Okay. When this started, I was afraid. I know. No, he said gently, not of losing the ranch. She waited. I was afraid of losing control, of needing someone, of history repeating. The wind moved softly around them. I nearly pushed you away because of something someone else did to me. Her eyes softened. You didn't push me away. I tried. Yes, she said honestly. Silence. Honest. Silence. He stepped closer. I don't want you here because you fought for the ranch. She searched his face. I want you here because when everything was uncertain, you didn't try to own me. You didn't try to fix me. You stood. The word settled between them again. Standing, not rescuing, not clinging, standing. Claire felt something inside her loosen. I didn't come back because I needed saving, she said quietly. I know. I came back because I wanted to choose something that wasn't built on fear. He studied her face as if memorizing it. And are you choosing this? Yes. Not desperate, not dramatic. Certain. For a moment, neither moved. The desert sky deepened into amber and rose. The white roses caught the last light like quiet lanterns. I don't have a ring, Ethan said suddenly. She blinked. What? He exhaled softly. I'm not proposing out of crisis or gratitude or adrenaline. He stepped even closer. I'm asking if you want to build something here, slowly, without cages, without contracts tying you to something you can't walk away from. Her throat tightened. Are you asking me to stay? I'm asking you to choose to stay. The distinction mattered. It always had. She stepped into him, close enough to feel his heartbeat. I choose it, she whispered. He kissed her then, not urgently, not desperately, but deliberately, the kind of kiss that says, this is not escape. This is foundation. When they pulled apart, the ranch house lights flickered on in the distance, warm, steady, real. Weeks passed. The tension faded from town gossip. The white roses grew fuller. Claire planted a small garden near the porch. Ethan repaired fences that no longer felt fragile. They argued sometimes about paint colors, about breakfast, about whether the windmill should be restored or replaced. Ordinary arguments, healthy ones, because neither of them belonged to the other. They were building alongside. One evening, months later, Claire stood alone by the roses. The desert air had cooled. Ethan walked up behind her. You know, he said softly, I used to think strength meant never needing anyone. She leaned back slightly into him. And now? I think strength is letting someone stand with you and knowing they can leave if they want. She smiled. I don't want to. The wind moved through the petals, soft, unafraid. The desert still carried storms, but now, when the sky darkened, they didn't run in opposite directions. They stood on the porch together, watching, waiting, certain that whatever came next would not own them. Because love, when chosen freely, does not cage. It roots like white roses in Arizona, growing where no one expected them to.